Hello, everyone. Just waiting for folks to continue to filter in, but welcome to today's webinar titled Be Ready, General Preparedness. This session is part of Prepared Together, Canadian Red Cross Disaster Preparedness Virtual Learning Series. Today's session is presented in English. Over the spring and summer of 2024, we are predicted to have an unprecedented level of intensity for emergencies across the country. The goal of the Canadian Red Cross Disaster Preparedness Series is to support people and communities to prepare for, increase their resilience to, and respond to future disasters. We are hosting learning sessions throughout the summer in both English and French. Use the QR code on your screen to visit our website to learn more and register for our other programming. We will also post the webpage link in the chat. And just a few housekeeping items before we begin. Closed captioning is available in both English and French. Just click the closed captioning button in the control panel at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions, just hit us up in the Q&A if there are any technical difficulties. At the end of today's session, we will have a Q&A period. So please leave your questions in the Q&A box in the control panel, and we will get to as many as we can at the end of the session. There will also be a few interactive pieces in today's webinar. You can use the chat at the bottom of your screen, and we will have pop-up polls. In the end, we will also have a feedback survey with a few questions asking you how we did today. Any questions you have about this webinar series, you can email us at rrr@redcross.ca. Okay, and I will now pass it on to Penny, our facilitator for today's session. Please enjoy. Welcome, Penny.
Hi there, good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you're coming to us from. I welcome you to this session, and I'll begin by providing a land acknowledgement from where I'm at. I am in Shubuktux, the land of the Mi'kmaq, and the home of the Mi'kmaq people, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. And what I would like to do is maybe ask people, if they wish, to put in the chat the particular land which they are located in, so that we can have an idea of where people might be coming to us from. And I would certainly enjoy seeing those from folks, if they don't mind sharing those. Thank you. I see some coming in now. That's great. And I just welcome everyone. You're coming to us from across Canada, which is amazing. And this is my first virtual session like this with Red Cross, and I'm very excited to be participating with so many people from across Canada. So thank you for sharing where you're from. I see lots of people from different locations. This is fantastic. Probably some names I may even know, because I see a few Halifax names popping up. So thank you for joining us. So we're going to be discussing some things about being prepared for emergencies, and being prepared is extremely important, and helping you and your resilience when it's coming to respond to an emergency situation. So just as a bit of an icebreaker, and again in the chat, using the chat function, what is the one item that you would like to have with you in an emergency? It doesn't have to be something serious. It could be something fun that provides you comfort or anything like that. I have something here. If anybody knows what this is what I like to have when I'm at home in my emergency. If anyone knows what that might be, it's my coffee filter. My coffee is extremely important to me. It's one of my comfort items. So in an emergency, I like to have charge for chocolate. Someone put chocolate. That's one of my favorite things too. And so crank radio, flashlight, water. So all of those are extremely important things to have with you in an emergency. So everybody's kind of on that right page. So that's great and fantastic. So Again, thank you for attending this webinar. Thank you for your participation. We're going to have some opportunities to provide some feedback as we're getting through this session. So thank you for being engaged. And so we're going to take some steps to help you feel better about being prepared. Some of you, unfortunately, may have experienced an emergency situation and you're joining us because you'd like to know a few tips and tricks on how to be better prepared. And some of you have been listening to the news and hearing that there may be more storms and more frequent incidences happening, and you'd like to start being prepared to feel better and being able to respond. So what does that look like? So what is the Be Ready workshop going to talk about? So being prepared in an emergency, there's going to be 4 steps. We're going to discuss with you today 4 steps about being prepared and how to be prepared in an emergency. And those 4 key steps are going to be very important. And hopefully at the end of the workshop, you will have that information and tools that you'll need to feel more comfortable when responding. Because again, in an emergency, we like to think that we're calm, cool, and collected. But sometimes when that emergency happens, all of that is gone. We're not calm, cool, and collected. But if we're prepared and we have a plan and we go through those 4 key steps, we may still have a bit of panic settle in, but then we remember we've got that emergency plan. So we're going to be able to follow up with some things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Red Cross in the terms of what Red Cross does in an emergency situation. It's amazing that the Red Cross responds and assists 78 people across Canada every single day. So every 3 hours, the Red Cross is stepping in and assisting people. So last year alone, that's over 260,000 people were supported by Red Cross in 2,550 emergencies. So when you think about that's absolutely amazing that the Red Cross and all of its volunteers and staff are stepping in and helping people in response to emergencies. So that leads to my next item is, what is an emergency and why do you need to prepare? So first of all, an emergency is a situation, pretty obvious. It's a situation where people are going to have to respond. It could be something small. It could be maybe a house fire. That could be considered an emergency. But what we're talking about today is something a little bit more extreme. It's a response where services are overwhelmed. An emergency service provider or providers are engaged. People are injured, property damage, lots of destruction, and we're expecting this to become more of an issue as climate change starts to really impact our communities. And, the intensity and frequency is going to just continue to escalate. So roads may be impassable, utilities may be unavailable. And I know in talking to some people, they say, oh, well, I live in the city, I'm always going to have sewer and water. You can't depend on that because those systems also depend on electricity. If there's no electricity and then their generator systems fail, you may also be at risk at not having sewer and water services. So you have to think about having absolutely nothing at some point. Electricity, communications may go down, hospitals may become overwhelmed, emergency responders may not be able to respond. So you need to start really thinking and planning for what it is that you are going to do to help yourself in an emergency situation, because you cannot always necessarily depend on supports right away. What about banks? What about grocery stores? Do you need to make sure you have gas? Do you have all your medications? A lot of things that you have to think through. And so being prepared and taking some of those proactive steps to help you to be safe in an emergency helps you to react in the right way. It helps you to adapt through any challenges that may come your way. And then it also helps you to recover more quickly. So having all of those things lined up and prepared. And so let's step into the next 4 steps. I've been talking about 4 steps. So one of the things we're going to look at is knowing the risks. And what we're really going to focus on is knowing the risks in your community. But one of the things I like to get people to think about is if you happen to be traveling somewhere, do a little homework and know what the risks are of where you're traveling so that you can actually be prepared. I'm just throwing that in there because that's also an important thing to think about in terms of knowing your risks. We're going to talk about making a plan and what that might look like, and also building a kit. And there's different types of kits that you can put together. There's ones that if you're asked to evacuate your house, what do you need to help you? What do you need to be prepared to stay at home for 3 days? So there's all kinds of different things. And building a network, that's extremely important. We sometimes live in our own little section, our own little world, but do we know our neighbors? Do we know what assistance they might need? Or how could they possibly help you in case there might be an emergency situation? So we're going to look at each of those individually, starting with, of course, knowing the risks. So think about the hazards that might be in your area and where to go for some information. So it could be your community, it could be your household. Not everybody has the same risk that they may be experiencing based on what their own individual situation might be. And so where you live is obviously going to be your first crucial step. And then you're going to make a list of things that may impact your own personal situation. It's dependent on your household size and different things like that. So again, understanding your risks is certainly extremely important. And so what are the risks? So if anybody wants to maybe put in the chat what they think a risk might be within your own immediate community, just put a little word or something in the chat of what you think a risk might be in your area. Forest fire, hurricanes, I see lots of comments, flood, forest fires, excellent. So definitely risks, landslides, power outages. Absolutely. A lot of those things are certainly things that are going to impact people in their own communities. So I'm going to go to the next slide so that I'm going to talk a little bit about this particular slide showing all of those different risks that people have been putting out there, which is great. And it's fantastic that you're in tune with what some of those risks are. So definitely home fire, earthquake, and so on. You can see that on the slide. And I can tell you that in my geographic area in Atlantic Canada, the only thing I have not had experience with is a volcano. So not me personally, but I've been responded to home fires. I've actually experienced an earthquake when I was living in New Brunswick. Definitely a hurricane where I live in Nova Scotia. Flooding, we had some serious flooding in Nova Scotia last year. Newfoundland actually experienced a tsunami quite some time ago, but it was very devastating for a particular community in Newfoundland. Tornadoes, wildfires. Now it's starting to experience extreme heat. And until a few years ago, I might have scratched my head when someone said global pandemic, but I think we can all now say that we've had experience with a global pandemic. Thunderstorm, landslide, winter storm. But again, a volcano. I mean, I did visit Iceland where they're experiencing volcanoes now, but they certainly weren't active when I was there. But high winds, lots of great comments are coming in. Thank you very much for that. So these impacts, these things in your local community are happening every day. They're just happening every day across Canada. And of course, now we know right now this is wildfire season for a lot of areas in Canada, and municipalities are putting out notices and banning burns and open fires and things like that. So knowing all of these hazards have the potential to exist in many of our communities, it's going to impact our society and our environment. So understanding the level of risk of these hazards is a great first step. So all of you are sounding like you're in tune with the risks, and this will help strengthen your capability to respond. So where do you get information? So the information that might be available to us comes from a variety of sources. These are just some examples of those resources that may be available. These might be apps on your phone that you have connections to, your local a lot of communities have Facebook pages, Public Health Agency, Environment Canada. Some suggestions I also have would be 211. Most provinces have the ability and access to 211, and most municipalities have 311 as a resource. And I know in my particular area in Halifax, they now have something called a vulnerable persons registry. So that provides a household the ability to register on the this registry who in a household might be vulnerable and need extra support should an emergency happen, whether it is an evacuation or just an awareness tool for that municipality. And someone asked the question, what is 211 and what is 311? 311 is a municipal phone number that you can contact your municipality. Again, not every municipality has it, but many do. And so 311 is the ability to get to your municipality and ask them questions about sewer and water, emergency services, your tax bills, and things like that specific to your municipality. And 211 is a provincial information line, which most provinces have access to. You dial 211 and they provide you with some information that could be, where's my local food bank, or well, who's my local MLA, different things like that. So a very detailed question. So the vulnerable person registry that I just mentioned is listing someone in your household that may need extra support. They may be visually impaired, maybe they have dementia, maybe they have a particular disability that in an emergency, if you're not home, then the municipality would be aware and maybe they're able to respond to that household and assist that person in evacuating. That's the kind of thing that the vulnerable registry would help support. So that's fairly new for my area. So other municipalities may also have that. So I recommend checking with your municipality. Municipalities also have emergency response services so that if there is an emergency notification, you register and you receive the emergency notification either by email or text. Those are typically two of the ways that do that. And again, so a lot of community Facebook pages do that as well. So there's lots of ways that you can actually obtain information during or before an emergency. So a lot of notices. Again, if a weather event is about to happen, we get lots of advance notice from Environment Canada, and then check with your public health agency and your other emergency services to see what is going on, because usually local emergency management offices establish a center of communication and they start providing updates to people when to evacuate or should you stay in place. So lots of places where you can get your information. So now we know an emergency could be coming. What do we do to plan for that emergency? So we need to start thinking about what that plan may look like. And again, having a plan is bringing together information that you think you're going to need ahead of time and what to do in case of an emergency happening. How are you going to evacuate your house? Schools also have emergency plans. So if you have school-age children or grandchildren or whatever it might be, what's the school's emergency plan? So maybe you should be aware of that as well. And your school may also ask you for your emergency contact information as part of their plan for the children that are in the school. Creating and practicing that plan is also going to be very important, because the more comfortable and more knowledgeable you are of your plan, it's going to help you feel more relaxed and more calm and bring you back down when that emergency happens, because, you know, we're all human. That emergency may happen and there may be that initial panic that may arise from that. So the planning document, we do have, we'll share that in the chat, but there is a planning document that Red Cross can help you put together with your plan. And it doesn't have to be a complicated plan, because you don't want to have to, panic by flipping through a lot of pages. But this plan, that template, can help you start. And you don't need to sit down and plan it all at once, pick away at it. as you think of things and revisiting it frequently. And don't forget to share your plan, because other people need to know what your emergency plan might involve. And this helps to build your capacity to be able to respond and, again, to recover and build that resilience. That's what being prepared is about, is preparing yourself and being resilient. So if people are prepared and they're going to be able to respond effectively. So don't forget about your friends and family. And you could print this plan. You could email it to yourself. There's different ways you could save it. Some people have it in a binder and different things like that. So let's look at what the contents of that plan might be to help think about what it is you could be putting together. So what types of important documents do you think you might need to have? Maybe your insurance papers, your car registration, your credit card information, photocopy the front and back, your passports, different things like that. Take videos of your house or your apartment or wherever you might be living. So that can help you keep a list of the contents of your home. So try to take a video of your home, walk through it, talk through your video, and point out things in your video. That's one way to store some important information that you have. Keep paper copies, keep it on a USB key, keep it in a cloud. However you store your information that you're comfortable with, that's a great place to store all those different pieces of information. And another thing, a meeting place. So people might be at work, people might be at school, people may be at different places. So if you establish a meeting place within your community, or maybe it has to be outside your community, establish more than one meeting place so that if something should happen and you're not at the same place, you're going to meet somewhere. If an emergency is declared, maybe you try to establish, within 1 hour, we will try to meet at such and such an address. But again, it's important that you choose more than one place outside of your home as a meeting place for everybody to go. So if you have school-aged children, make sure the school is aware of that and they have that as part of their emergency plan. If it's a family friend or something like that, obviously they should be aware of the situation and be able to help you with your emergency plan. And again, if you're separated or at work, it's important that you even practice that with your family and friends and make sure everybody's comfortable with the plan. Take a little drink while I'm going. And so places to stay. Oh, we went ahead to the next slide. But places to stay, again, identify that within your network. With your evacuation plan, make sure you find the fastest way to evacuate your home. Pardon me. And you're going to take time to actually draw the plan. So there's actually within the template that we sent you, there's sheets with the ability to draw the floor plan of your home. If you have young children, have them be part of drawing the evacuation plan so that they can, if they're part of putting that plan together, they can certainly be helpful. I'm just, pardon me. I knew I would start coughing partway through this. I apologize. Information, contact information. How many people only have their contacts on their cell phone? And if you don't have the ability to access your cell phone, you need to have all of your contact information. So that you can gain access to all of that. So again, your cell phone might not be available. Sometimes landlines may still be available. So I actually have a landline. I'm probably one of the few people that may still have a landline. I do have cordless phones, but I also have that one phone that I can actually plug in so that I still have access to my landline service. Remember to base your plan on your risks that you may experience within your community more frequently. For some people, it may be a flood. For some people, it may be fire or hurricane or something like that. So make sure that you do prepare and customize your emergency plan. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit next about customizing your plan, because I mentioned a few things. Look, I see someone still has a landline for emergency. Yay for landlines. So I'm going to talk about getting a little more specific about some of the details within your emergency plan. Some of you may have children or grandchildren, you know, your neighbors have children, and so animals and pets are people too, and then you also have your folks with specific needs. So think about how you need to evacuate somebody who may be visually impaired, someone with dementia, someone hearing impaired, someone with physical limitations to their ability to evacuate on their own. So ensure that with your children, if they're at school, are they aware? Do they have some phone numbers with them that they can contact some people if they can't get a hold of you? Also, teach the children to know who that designated person is. And again, if they're part of that planning process, who are they comfortable calling might be an important thing to ask them. Daycares as well. I was talking a lot about schools, but daycares would have to have an emergency plan and they would need all of those emergency contacts as well. And pets and animals, whatever type of pet or animal people may have, many public shelters don't take pets. So you may have to have an alternate plan for what are you going to do with your pet as part of your emergency kit that we'll talk a little bit out in the future. A few slides from now, we're going to talk about things you need to pack. So don't forget about your pets and animals. And we're very fortunate here in the Halifax area that we have a team called the Disaster Animal Response Team. They will actually come to a shelter and set up an area for housing people's pets and animals so that people staying at a shelter can visit with their pets and animals and still have them close by. So we've been very fortunate to have that type of response here in the Halifax area, which I think is absolutely amazing. So people with specific needs, again, you're going to probably need to plan in some extra time to be able to safely move people, consider all of their individual needs, and so ensure that current medical conditions, treatments, healthcare providers, everybody that they still need to keep in touch with is aware of where you might be relocating. Again, caregivers who are connected to that individual may also need to be aware of their emergency plan. So think of all those different aspects for children and for animals and people with specific needs, and have them as part of your plan, and certainly ensure that all of those things are addressed and considered. I mentioned about building a kit. So the next step is about building a kit that can help you be prepared for all of the different responses. And again, kits can be very personal. Kits could be for staying in place. Kits can be for also a go kit for when you have to leave an emergency. Because if someone knocked on your door today and said, you have 10 minutes to leave, does everyone on this call feel comfortable being able to leave their house within 10 minutes and have everything that they think they need? So I see some no's, so very, very good, honest responses. So again, an emergency may mean that you have to evacuate quickly, or you may be told to shelter in place. So it's very important when you think about this. We usually have a rule of thumb of about 72 hours or 3 days that you might have to stay in shelter by yourself. So you need to learn what it is that you may need to be self-sufficient. So again, a personal preparedness kit in your home could be in a backpack like you see in this photograph, but you're going to think about different foods, different supplies that you might need, things that you can provide for yourself and your family in case of an emergency. So let's look at some types of emergency kits and talk a little bit about those. So a grab and go kit, I talked about sheltering in place. A car kit, some of us are on the road a lot, so we may need a car kit. Some of us may be at our workplace. And I mean, For a lot of people, do workplaces actually have emergency kits on site for their staff and employees? So again, I encourage people to also think about what your needs might be in an emergency if you're not at home. So there's different sizes of kits. You need to think about warmth, water, and food. So again, if you're at home and you're told to shelter in place, if the power goes out, do you have something to keep you warm? And again, if you use something like candles, never leave a room with the candle burning. So how many people are in your household is something you need to think about. What type of kit would suit your household? So again, if you're going to be sending this or putting this together, is it going to be a backpack? Is it going to be a container? If it's something like a container, make sure it's something that's not too heavy, that maybe you need more than one container, because again, depending on what your risks are in your area, you may be told to shelter in place or you may be told to grab and go. So it's all going to be a different situation. So what I'm going to focus on right now is a grab and go kit and a shelter in place kit. So let's talk about the grab and go kit. Again, you want let's say there's 3 people in your household. Maybe what you're doing is you're putting 3 backpacks together so that each person has what they may need as a grab and go kit. So you can see examples of water, food, a list, your emergency plan, and a list of information, your medications, some safety equipment. One thing that's very important to have is if you take your cell phone, do you have an extra cord and a charging block in order to be able to go somewhere and plug in your phone? Or maybe you have one of those battery packs. And again, banking systems might not be available if the power's out. So always try to have some change and small denominations of bills available. And also think about first aid necessities, personal items, hygiene items, all the things that you think you need to be able to take with you if you are asked to leave. And again, each person is different. So each of those kits, if you have children, maybe you're going to put a few games or their comfy teddy bear or something like that in the emergency kit so that there's some comfort with you as well when you leave. And again, some snacks and things like that. Chances are, if you're able to go to a shelter, there's going to be warmth and food available for you, but you also want some of those comfort items that you can take with you. Again, non-perishable foods are important. How often should food, water, and the grab and go? Yeah, that's a good question. How often should things be replaced? Always check your grab and go kit because things have expiry dates, or I shouldn't say expiry dates. A lot of things have best before dates. So you should be checking for those. You can have those items in your kit for a few weeks or months, maybe beyond the best before dates, but always check your kit on a regular basis. That was a great question. And again, extra keys for your house. I mean, I could name all kinds of different things that you should have. Again, paper, pens, different things. And again, don't forget about your pets. I said a pack for every person or individual in your home. That also includes your pets. So maybe you have a backpack put together for your pet. Maybe you have a water bowl. Maybe you have some food in there. So think about all those things. And again, I see some good comments coming in that if you did put something like canned items in, you can get those canned items that have a pop lid that opens on their own. But if you don't, make sure you have a can opener. So that was a good point that I just saw pop up on the screen. Maybe you don't like being in crowded places, so some personal protective equipment might be important, some work gloves, high visibility vest if you're going to be somewhere in your car, different things like that. So masks, ear protection, and things like that are important. So what if you have to shelter in place? What does that look like? You may be told roads are going to be impassable, or there's a major snowstorm coming, somebody can't come get to you, or you're not able, the roads are closed and you're not able to get anywhere. I live in an area where I'm on a loop, but there's water on either side of that loop, so I could potentially become an island at some point and not available. So again, rule of thumb is be prepared for 72 hours. So whatever you think you need for 72 hours. So at least 1 liter of water per person per day. is important. If you have pets, don't forget to add another extra liter or two for your pets. Again, rule of thumb for 3 days. You may also need some water for cleaning and hygiene. And again, this is when you're sheltering in place. So one of the things I do, even when I lived in an urban area, I always filled my bathtub so that I have extra water. As I pause and take a drink, sorry about that. And again, non-perishable food for each person for at least 1 day. So things that might contain protein, granola bars, cereal, uh, trail mix, different things like that, dried fruit, and things like that. Again, non-perishable things. And so um, supplies for your pet. Again, I keep mentioning pets, medications, first aid kit, a crank radio. I did see somebody say that as one of the things they wanted to take with them. Extra batteries or things to recharge. Some people I know have solar panels to be able to charge their smaller battery operated items. You may need some of the things. Again, I live in a rural area. Toilet paper, that's also important. I live in a rural area, so I might have something like a tarp or two in case something breaks a window and I'm able to like hammer up a tarp and put it in place in an emergency. And again, bottled water is important, but if you have containers that are refillable, that's also a good idea too, because quite often, let's say it's a winter storm that's coming, you have some time to prepare in advance to put all of these things in a location that's accessible again, filling your bathtub, filling some refillable containers with the water that you want to drink or cook with and things like that. I encourage people to do that. A little more environmentally friendly to have some containers that you can refill versus buying a case of water, but whatever you're comfortable with is what's important. And things to keep you occupied, favorite games, different things like that. So that's important. Again, 72 hours may not seem like a long time, but sometimes when you have children or people who have a normal daily routine that gets disrupted, you may need something to distract them and keep them occupied. So again, preparing your kit is going to be specific to your particular needs. So the checklist that we have through Red Cross is an important start. So that can help you with, there's suggested items on that checklist. And again, you're going to create it according to your specific needs. I love this photograph because it's pretty much what my kits look like. I might have a couple of totes on a shelf in my basement. I have one that's for staying in place, and I have one that I can grab and go. So the one I have that stays in place, I have some lanterns, battery operated lanterns. I do have some candles that I have in special containers, and I do have some rechargeable lights that I have. So I really dig that out when I know there's a storm coming and make sure everything, the batteries are still operating, that everything's charged. And so when building your kit, again, it's best to focus on your specific needs and what risks you might be facing. Items that you cannot do without medications. So some people will put medications in their emergency kit. And yes, medications do have expiry dates. So keep cycling through. So put some medications in your emergency kit, but maybe in a couple of months' time, you take those out and replace them with fresh medications and things like that. An extra set of eyeglasses and things like that. So even if you get a new prescription, keep those old glasses, keep them handy in your emergency kit. Hearing aids, diabetic supplies, walkers. There's all kinds of things that you may need to keep in mind when putting together an emergency kit, and things that you need to grab and go. So again, when building your kit, some of the things to keep in mind before you purchase anything, see what you already have. Don't go out and buy things that you think you may need, and you may actually already have it. Keep a list of things that you need with you. So let's say you make a list of things you'd like to have in your emergency kit, and maybe once a month when you're out shopping, you look at that list and say, oh, here, I'm at this store. This is what I can get for my emergency kit today. So it's not something you need to purchase and do all at once. It's much more economical to be able to build that kit over time. And again, buy items that have a long shelf life. Check those best before dates on a regular basis. Pardon me. Again, for larger food items that don't need to be refrigerated after they're opened, keep that in mind. And during a disaster, because your refrigerator, keep hair ties in my kit, some elastic bands. That's great ideas, just different things. So good suggestions are coming through in the chat. And again, buy items that you think your friends and family may also need. So if you know somebody that needs help building their kit, maybe you can help them build their kit. So so best before and best expiration date. So best before, the food doesn't expire. It just means the quality of the food may be lower. Whereas an expiry date, if something's deemed to expire, then I wouldn't consume that because that's an expiry date. But a best before date doesn't mean the food is expired. It just means its quality is not the same. So again, check the contents of your kit at least once a year. I encourage people to do it every 6 months, like we do with our smoke detectors when the time changes. Also check your emergency kit. So that's a really good thing. And again, if you have to use your emergency kit, which I hope none of you do, but if you do have to, always make sure you're maintaining it and replacing all of the materials. So the final thing is building your network. We talked about a lot of different things today. So building your network is extremely important. And there are some apps that are out there. There's one in my neighborhood called Friendly Neighbor. And if people are registered on the same app called Friendly Neighbor, then they can actually be part of a network together and they can stay connected. And I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of communities that have Facebook pages. So there's a lot of things where you have the ability to connect with people, whether electronically. The municipality where I am has a vulnerable persons registry. So there's a way that people are keeping in touch with each other and checking in. Pardon me. Places of worship, healthcare providers, different places have ways of helping to build a network. So that's part of connecting with your network. So again, how do you build, you're new to an area. How do you build that social network? And in an emergency, you may have to respond and not know some people. So one of the things that would probably be very good is starting to connect with people now. If you think there's an emergency coming and you feel you might need support, or maybe you know your neighbor might need some support, maybe connect with them before an emergency actually happens. There's neighborhood and community events that happen to get to know your neighbors. Again, join that online community group and share your preparedness steps. Maybe you could mention today that you attended a Red Cross session and you have this link to prepare an emergency plan. Have you ever thought about preparing an emergency plan? So maybe helping some people and starting to connect with people and attending community events is probably one of the best ways to build community resilience. So you're helping your own resilience, but if you start connecting with people in your community, then your community can build resilience. So sometimes it might be a little harder in some communities because people come and go to work and they're not home during the day. They may not get to meet their neighbors. So it's really important to maybe try and prepare some own ideas about how to connect with neighbors. Again, one of the best resources in your community is your local fire department. They are a great resource to find out what's going on in the community. The fire service members are great for knowing their community members and what's going on in their communities. And sometimes they even keep a list, especially in the small rural areas, because the volunteer firefighters are part of that community. Well, all firefighters are part of their communities, but check with your local fire department because they often have a lot of social connections with community organizations and different things like that. If there's local health clinics and local support groups, different community organizations also take a lot of information. Create a buddy system. If you know you have a vulnerable neighbor next door and maybe their family doesn't live close by, maybe you can team up with some friends and neighbors to help that person in case of an emergency. Maybe your neighborhood may create an emergency plan to help those vulnerable neighbors. So working with your neighbors and identifying people that need that little extra help in an emergency or who to turn to. So maybe you can reach out to them and say, who can I contact if there's an emergency to help you out? But one final step I didn't mention through all of this is very important, is actually taking care of yourself. An emergency can be extremely stressful, and it's very important to know those different signs of stress. So, we've talked about all of those tangible things to help you prepare for an emergency and knowing the risk, but we also need to know in an emergency what stressful things can happen to us and what those impacts are, and to certainly take the right steps to know your feelings and your reactions and watch for that before, during, and after an emergency. If we know something's coming, it's extremely important to know those signs and also recognize those signs with the loved ones around you. And so if you have some techniques that are available, some of the signs might be you just suddenly feel physically and mentally drained, or you have trouble focusing and making decisions, or you're becoming easily frustrated. Just know what those signs are in yourself and just take a moment to take care of yourself. If it's deep breathing, if it's meditation, if it's going for a walk, if it's listening to music, whatever it is that you know you need to do, make sure you do it. And also get help when you need it, because if you're responsible for other people and you're experiencing some of those things that are caused by stress, you may not be able to effectively help those people who are around you. So be sure you're safe. Be sure that you're eating well, that you're focusing, you're staying connected. Be patient with yourself and those around you. Set your tasks and priorities, do them in small chunks. Your normal routine is no longer a normal routine, so learn what that routine may become. Again, gathering information, putting all of those resources together is extremely important, and it's certainly helps to reduce your stress. I'm not going to say this is going to eliminate your stress, but this is certainly going to help reduce your stress, to help you stay positive and to stay focused, because having that plan, being prepared, knowing the risks for what may impact you is going to help you and your family, your friends, your community get through. It's all about building resilience. It's all about being together. So let's look at a checklist that we talked about today. The checklist is knowing your risks, having that emergency plan, having that emergency kit, and developing that network. So again, we talked about what some of the risks are in your community. We touched on what a kit might look like. And again, you may have one for each person and pet within your household. Think about what that plan might look like. Start building your kit. And again, doesn't have to be done right away. You can add it to your grocery list every time you're getting groceries or going to buy something to repair something in your home. If you're at the hardware store, then like, oh, I could use this for my emergency kit. So again, also build that network, have people around you that know what your situation might be, but also try to be aware of others and their situations and what can you do to possibly assist them. Do it all in small steps and work towards being prepared. And that's going to make an extremely big difference in an emergency. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Again, the less complicated it is, the easier it is for you to focus on what it is that you need to do in an emergency. And spending the time to do it is going to help you. And these 4 steps, hopefully, that we touched on very quickly in this webinar, is going to help you feel a little bit more prepared and a little bit able to respond in an emergency, and to help you build that resiliency and that comfort in dealing with an emergency. So I can open this now if anyone has some questions. I see there might be a few questions in the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, you can put those in the Q&A. I'd certainly be willing to try and answer some questions that you have. If I might have missed something, or someone has a suggestion of something that they've done for their emergency kit. How often should we be rotating the items in our emergency preparedness kit? Well, again, one of the things I suggest is, much like we check our smoke detectors when the time changes, I would certainly ensure that people check it at least 6 months. I know some people might only check it once a year, but I certainly encourage people at least every 6 months to check your plan, and to ensure that things are current and up to date. And as I mentioned, if you put extra medications in that plan or in that kit, you may want to do it a little bit more frequently and rotate those medications through. So some people were asking, I would suggest contacting your local municipality. They may have some information on how to take care of your pets during an emergency. I know, again, in Halifax, we have the Disaster Animal Response Team. Other municipalities may have something similar. Yeah, local veterinarians may know. Some veterinarians may actually take in pets in an emergency situation. Some people mentioned they actually have portable shelters that they can take with them that fold up for their animals. Lots of good comments coming in from people. Where can we get crank radios? Well, I actually bought mine from Lee Valley Tools, but some places like Canadian Tire or Mountain Equipment Co-op has things like crank radios. Mine actually is solar and crank and battery operated, so it actually sits in my windowsill in my kitchen, so it's always charged. Or if I needed to, I could crank it. So someone, again, I mentioned very quickly at the beginning, is if you're traveling, know what the risks are of where you may be going, but you may also end up stranded at an airport. That's happened to some people if flights get canceled when you're traveling. So always be prepared. Again, your own situation is going to determine what your actual responses might be and what the needs you may need. So always carry a little something with you in your carry-on in case your luggage is waylaid and somewhere else. Make sure you have something with you that you can actually respond to that situation. Again, each situation is going to be unique and different for each person. So again, in the chat is the link to the Red Cross emergency link. I'm just reading someone's comment. Yeah, I know there are always people who decide they want to stay in place when they've been told to evacuate because they don't really think about the risks that they may cause to other people. So it's extremely important that if you're told to evacuate, you're being told for a very good reason, and you're putting your emergency service providers at risk if you don't evacuate. And they may not be able to respond to you, and you're putting yourself at risk and others if you don't actually evacuate when you're being directed to do so. So it's important to think not just of yourself, but the others that you may be impacting. And again, I can't quite answer Dan's question about emergency deniers because it's not something I've actually encountered me personally, but if I were to encounter that, I've actually dealt with situations where we've had to bring the police in to ensure that there's order kept in the local area that we were, because some people, again, not that they're denying, but they're actually their behavior, they hadn't been taking care of themselves, or maybe they have some mental health issues and their routine is disrupted and they just don't know how to respond and what to do. So we bring in some psychosocial supports to help people focus on their mental health and wellness. And we actually, as Red Cross, do have some sessions coming up that deal with psychosocial supports and things like that that you can have with an emergency situation. Just reading a few of the comments. Oh, someone asked a good question about heating food during emergencies. I actually have those sterno cans that people use for chafing dishes at restaurants. I actually have a kit that I purchased that way that I can actually put a small pot on top of that. And I only have it lit when I'm cooking the hot water. And then I put the sterno can out. And I actually do my cooking on my stovetop. I don't do it anywhere else in my house. And someone was wondering about sewer, like a small butane stove. I have one of those as well. I have quite a bit in my little emergency kit. So I have a small butane stove. I have a sterno kit. And again, sewer and water, I'm on a rural system, a rural well. So that's another reason I fill my bathtub so that I can actually flush my toilet. Oh, a muffin tin and tea lights in a muffin tin. That's a good idea. So I think we're just about out of time, and I think we're going to wrap up the session. And I really appreciate everyone's participation. We had a lot of great comments. I wish I could have gotten to them all. But again, thank you so much for your questions and feedback and participation. Very exciting to participate in this national webinar for sure.
Thank you so much, Penny. This was so informative. I personally learned a lot about how to stay ready for an emergency. And before we take off, we just have a really quick poll for everybody that I'm going to be launching now. And it should pop up on your screen. We would love any sort of feedback you have for us on the following two questions. Is there anything preventing you from preparing for an emergency or disaster? And what could the Canadian Red Cross do to help you prepare for emergencies or disasters in the future? And so please let us know what you think about these two questions if you have time. And there will also be a feedback survey that launches on your browser once we exit the webinar. We appreciate your input as it allows us to better support Canadians in preparing for, responding to, and developing resilience to disaster. And finally, we hope you can join us for our next webinar, which is next Tuesday, June 11th, on grief and loss in emergencies at 12 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we will share the link to our webpage one more time so you can register for that. So thank you so much for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.